Hey, everyone, it's Sleepy Reader, and it is hot out. I think it's 93 degrees. We don't even have the heat dome over us here, and it's already 93 degrees. So I'm I'm praying that that heat dome that's over the eastern part of the United States does not move west. No, that's not bad. This is Fort George Magnetic Fields, a hazy IPA, and it's nice and cold. I do have a friend who tells me it's not real IPA if it's hazy. So, yeah, I'm guilty of drinking those hazy IPAs. What can I say? I wish it was cold and rainy. Stupid to play with those things. Oh man. So you may have probably haven't noticed, but for 3 weeks I haven't made any videos, and I've been getting behind on my comic book reading. But I have here with me, I haven't completely stopped reading comics though. I have with me 15 comics from 2 and 3 weeks ago. Um, and I've just mixed them all together and I've put them in my usual countdown format. So I'll start with number 15, my least favorite, at least on this reading. It's very subjective. It could always change. I could completely disagree with myself another time. Uh, I guess all of these comics had something interesting to offer, but some, yeah, less so for me. So let's start with at number 15, Psychodrama Illustrated by Gilbert Hernandez. And I have had some bad luck with Gilbert Hernandez lately, and this continues to be that way. This wasn't horrible. It felt to me kind of dull and pointless. The stories in here, I believe, are movies that the character Fritz starred in. So this main story, the because there's two stories. There's the story up above, and then there's a little story down below, a completely separate story, but kind of in the style of the old comic strips, and or like the Furry Freak Brothers, which would have Adventures of Fat Freddy's Cat down below. But uh, but this is apparently just another movie that Fritz is in. Although I couldn't really recognize the character of like the super busty Fritz in this. Anyway, the top one is definitely Fritz with her giant breasts, and she is kind of like the town courtesan or prostitute. More like a courtesan, I think, in this vague medieval world. And stuff happens, but it doesn't seem to add up to anything to me. And I found it only mildly interesting. I guess it says concluded next issue, so maybe the story will gain meaning if it really does conclude next issue. The science fiction story, I believe, ended in this story. In this, maybe the whole point was for him to draw a rocket ship that looks like a sperm flying through space. Um, yeah, it was just kind of meaningless to me. There was a spaceship crew, and there was some aliens and evil aliens and attempts to make peace that didn't work, I believe. Um, in at number 14 is Bloody Dozen, and I was enjoying this a lot at first. I remember by issue 5, I was starting to have my doubts, and it definitely ended in a way that I did not find very interesting or exciting in issue 6. I don't want to spoil it for anyone who does want to read it. I will say that the ending seems a setup, like that this whole series is moving certain characters in place to be used in another story, because the Tales of the Shrouded College are going to be a series of miniseries, all different stories, in some way linked to this magical shrouded college, this sort of invisible conspiracy thing, of magic that's hidden in our world. Um, I think I'll probably still try the next one. It's by Charles Soule, and the art was by Albuquerque, but not the Albuquerque that I really like his art by Alberto Albuquerque, and his artwork doesn't do a lot for me. But I think ultimately it was also, even though there's some cool images, ultimately it was Charles Soule. He wasn't giving this story his all, I guess. So it wasn't so satisfying. But like I said, I'm still kind of intrigued by this world that they've created. So I'll probably pick up the next miniseries. Most of Charles Soule's indie comics have satisfied me. So maybe the whole arc of miniseries together, I'll say, wow, Charles Soule's done something incredible. That's the hope, anyway. In at number 13 is Drawing Blood number 2, the sort of semi autobiographical comic book about Kevin Eastman, this character who has a name very similar. I think it's Shane Westman or something like that. He's trying to put on a Broadway show and it's having all kinds of bad luck. And he owes money to some mobsters from Lithuania. Um, and uh, he's got problems. And it just, I don't know, it just seemed kind of boring and mopish. I found the first issue really interesting and intriguing, but now I'm really not sure if I'm going to continue with this. Probably not. In at number 12 is Ain't No Grave by written by Scotty Young, art by Jorge Corona, and Corona's art's a little different in every book, and it's with his usual coloring, colorist Jean Francis Below. But I felt like there were times where a lot of the color can be really great, but there's other times where the color did not serve the art that well, and it was a little hard to see all the details that that Jorge Corona put into this kind of crazy Western town that is also hell, or the land of the dead, or something. Hades, the underworld. Uh, so there was intriguing stuff here. I think this is going to be a very short miniseries. Um, I I like the art. I'm just okay with the story, and I wish the colorist let us see more of the art. I mean, some of these pages are great, and the color is great. Um, it's it's got kind of a crazy look, and I don't know if it's kind of, I don't know what, anime inspired in some way. It doesn't really feel like anime or manga art. But let me see what I, or maybe I don't, maybe almost Frank Miller inspired. I don't know. The art just gets kind of crazy here and there. So it's an interesting book, but not a fully satisfying book. Also not fully satisfying. I'm putting at number 11, Napalm Lullaby. Loving the art in here by Bengal. And they do mention at the back this time that Bengal is I think, a French artist or a European artist. Um, I can't find it. But anyway, but we're on issue 4 and we just don't have enough information about this world. And I still don't super care about the characters. There's some hint about maybe these characters that are fighting kind of a Supergirl like character and are would be assassins of the Superman God character. Maybe they know each other, or there's some, they have some relationship to each other. Um, like there maybe the Superman family. I keep saying Superman, but it's not Superman. It's like Gorkle or something. Uh, has gone out and killed other people with superpowers, and these people have superpowers, and they were in hiding. Um, it's not clear to me what their superpowers are, and there's a lot of unclarity. And I know that Rick Remender really wants readers who can go with him and figure things out on their own, but I want a little more. And hopefully I will get more. I'm still going to keep sticking with that one. I'm just curious. World Tree 10, I enjoyed, but um, what do I want to say about it? At times, I can't. So part of it is it's hard for me to remember all the details from previous issues. So this is a much better book to read in trade and or trades, perhaps when all the trades come out or all the when it comes out in some other form. But Tinian, the writer, has slowed down here, and I think he's bringing in characters that explain how I think it's this character, how he set up his whole thing that he's doing. And so we're getting various background stuff. And there's these characters, and now I just can't remember how they were introduced last issue or the issue before, or whenever they were introduced. A series of characters, each of whom's their parent, they're all related, I guess, and their parents named them, give their made their first names the last names of famous 20th century science fiction writers like Asimov and Herbert and the like. Um, so I remember noticing that previously, and now it's made more explicit that that's what their parents did. And they somehow were working for the guy whose name I can't remember anymore, who I think is dead in the current time. Anyway, it's you can see it's a lot of stuff to keep track of. But I kind of love the concept of this cyberpunk slash horror novel. It feels very Stephen King to me. Although Stephen King probably would make everything a little more clear. James Tynion is not the master yet. Um, in at number 9, I put Creature from the Black Lagoon. This is nowhere near as good as the Dracula book they did before in this Universal Monster series, but it still has a lot of interesting stuff. The art's decent. The coloring is really good by Dave Stewart, and I keep wanting to know what's going to happen next. I just wish there were more characters of interest. We've got kind of a serial killer who's also an assassin, I guess, and we've got our heroine, and we've got the creature. But we don't have people who really have relationships with each other or any of that kind of thing. We got lots of cool variant covers too. I think my favorite cover of the week, though, would be on Dawn Runner, written by Ram V, art by Evan Cagle. I put this in at number 8, and sorry, I didn't. When I sat down, I thought I was entirely in shade, but I'm pretty sun dappled on these art pages. So the story's pretty interesting. It is another kaiju story, and that's it's developing more. This there are basically the memories or the stored brains of some past survivors or people who didn't ultimately survive the kaiju invasion embedded in this suit of giant battle armor that fights kaiju. And our heroine, who links up neurally to that suit, is spending a lot of time exploring those memories. And that's giving us a little more of the background of this world, but kind of like what's it called? Napalm whatever, Napalm Lullaby, kind of like Napalm Lullaby, it's taking its time in filling in. Oh, I think there's some dust in the area. These idiots hire these crews to do their landscaping, and they come by with their gas-powered blowers, and they just blow dust around because there's no leaves around for them to blow, but they blow anyway. And I think that's what I'm breathing in right now, and I'm feeling like a cranky old man. So, like Napalm Lullaby, it's slow to fill us in, but we are getting filled in a bit more and getting more of a picture of because we of how devastating, how much of the earth was perhaps devastated, although I'm not sure how much, by the advent of these kaiju that seem to come from another dimension. Color doesn't always work. It's Dave Stewart color, which I'm admiring on Creature from the Lost Lagoon and wondering what he's doing here sometimes. It probably looked cool on the computer screen. Um, but so I'm enjoying this book, and I'm willing to write it out. Of course, my big complaint, really, and I think it's the fault of the artist and the colorist, is when there's a giant robot versus kaiju fight, I still can't really tell what's going on. So, oh, I know there's a fight, but I don't, whose fist is hitting whose face or what. I can't tell. I guess he's cutting in half or cutting a kaiju in half. I finally was able to tell that. Or not he, she, because it's a woman in the armor. Um, yeah, so it gives off a lot of frenetic energy. But I want to really see those kaiju fights. That's me. In at number 7 is death rate death ratioed, I think, like a ratio. Although I don't understand what that means in the context here. It's a world, a guy wakes up after being in a coma for 20 years and he finds our world is now a world run by social media, thumbs up and thumbs down. And if you have no thumbs up, when you finally run out of thumbs up, when it's all thumbs down, you die. You wear a collar and it blows up your head. Um, Kind of a fun concept, kind of an overly obvious criticism of social media. The art, it's by Mark Russell. I always try out Mark Russell books, and it was just a one shot, and it had a lot of good scenes, a lot of cool stuff. And like I said, I really like the art, which is by someone named Lacey. Just that name, Laci. Um, and it had a lot of darkly funny bits, but I wasn't too thrilled where it went in the end. Or it just didn't I just didn't buy into the last bit of how he kind of gets out of this world, and it seemed too easy and convenient. Like Mark Russell just needed to wrap it up. Although there was a nice um tie-in or callback to what he did for a job, the science he was working on before he went into a coma on the last page, which I thought was interesting. Um, Very exciting was Geiger number 6, which was also an ode to libraries and bookstores, or not bookstores, just to libraries and books. Um, and I wondered who chose the books that we can actually read the names of on the cover here, because we have 2 books by Lois McMaster Bujold, who I think has won a number of Hugo Awards for her military science fiction novels. We've got someone named Ian Dunt, Clive James, who apparently writes memoirs. I looked him up. And then a couple of Ian Banks books. And Gerald Durrell. Isn't it Lawrence Durrell? I don't know. So I wondered, were these books put here are we getting a message from Gary Frank about some of his favorite books, or are we getting a message from Jeff Johns about some of his favorite books? We get some GI Robot. What was he called? I'm trying to remember. But anyway, we got some of him in here. And so I'm looking forward to he and Geiger meeting up. And, you know, lots of cool art and coloring thanks to Gary Frank and Brad Anderson. And, just another decent chapter in Geiger. One thing that, strikes me as kind of funny is there's these people who are like I guess their interior organs are all getting tumors all the time. I assume from radiation. And so they hunt for other people and they kill them and they take their various organs and transplant them into their bodies and then eat the rest. But they don't look like people who have some uh, good way to do surgery. They're just running around in the desert with knives and other things. They don't seem to have sophisticated technology, is what I'm saying. So it's hard to imagine how they transplant all the organs out of someone's body into theirs. And it looks like they're going to show up again next issue. So that's fun. This is a fun comic book. And I'm learning, something about the Gary Frank art makes me take it too seriously. And so at first, in the first series, I thought there was going to be a really deep meaning to it all. But as a just fun sort of, I think of it now as the Hulk meets meets Mad Max, and I have a lot of fun reading it. In at number 5 is the Six Finger. I remember really liking this. I must have read it 3 weeks ago, and now I can't remember everything about it because the Six Finger and the One Hand have kind of got all mixed up in my head. Um, but this one has great color and great art, or good art and great color, I would say. Sumit Kumar's the line artist, and Lee Lowridge is the color artist. And yeah, we're just delving deeper and deeper into the mystery of what's going on, and I'm really enjoying it. It may end up being very Matrix-like, but I'm not sure. Really enjoyed, and I read this out loud with my daughter, My Bad Number Two. Well, this is the third My Bad series, mini-series, this one called Escape from Peculiar Island. And that almost looks like a Mike Mignola drawing. And it does say somewhere, apologies to MM on the tombstone there. So it is, perhaps there's a specific Mike Mignola cover that looks sort of like this too. Uh, but my big complaint about the first issue was that the color actually obscured the art a little too much and made it harder for me to enjoy it. This issue seemed way funnier to me and much more in the vein of all the good My Bad I've read before. But it certainly helped that the color didn't obscure anything this time around. It's not like the most brilliant coloring, but everything worked. And yeah, uh, there's just loads of funny stuff in here. I think it it builds incredibly nicely off of the previous miniseries, but I think you'd still get most of the amusement out of it, even if you hadn't read the previous miniseries. Um, yeah. That's John Adams. He came from the past, and as long as he keeps his shirt off, he has superpowers. Batman Dark Age also, I think I read 3 weeks ago, and it's tying in more with the what was it called? The Superman Atom Age? What was the previous series by this same creative group? So I actually want to go back and reread that Superman miniseries. And I think coming up is, I'm guessing, is going to be Wonder Woman: The Golden Age. But anyway, this is it just fires on all cylinders. It's if you, assuming you like Mike Allred art and you are fine with variations on the Batman myth that stray pretty far from Batman's normal origin, this is a really great comic. It's definitely one of my favorite ones currently coming out. And I think we have at least, this is book 3. I think we have at least 5 issues total, and each one is super thick without ads. Um, so a great deal all around. The top 2, I could have gone either way. Maybe I should have put Savage Dragon in at number 1. This is the first Savage Dragon I've read in 2 or 3 years. I followed it for quite a while, being convinced by Jared Osborne to do so. And then the art style changed, and it just, like, maybe it was the inking style or something, and I just didn't like the way it looked anymore, so I just dropped it because I'd had a lot of, like, 20 issues of Savage Dragon. It was good, but I kind of needed a rest. And now that I picked it up, the art style is the way I like it. The inking style or whatever, post Jack Kirby kind of looking stuff. The color's great. The story is crazy action and bizarre things happening all over the place. We got Steamboat Willie Mickey Mouse, who's like, I think, kind of a horny guy who jumps all over women, assuming because he's a celebrity, they'll sleep with him. I'm assuming this is a bit of a Tawny reference there. Um, we got 2 Savage Dragons, neither of them the original, or one's the super original. We got a crazy amount of naked woman, with a little bit of naked man. I guess there's kind of a fun race where some people take their clothes off in San Francisco. I'm guessing from the context here. I never heard of that before. But yeah, wow. He packed a lot in this issue, and it all looks great. This new villain looks hilarious. Um, so I had a great time. Oh, and even a twisted homage to a Harvey Comics comic. When my daughter was younger, I would be afraid to have this around the house. She'd be traumatized, but and she probably wouldn't like looking at it now. But I'm not as worried about her stumbling across it. In fact, Savage Dragon was full of stuff that is like might disturb a young girl. Um, and I used to worry about my daughter stumbling across it. As far as I can tell, completely kid friendly. At my number one spot, I didn't have a lot of. I just thought I would try this one issue out. I didn't have a lot of expectations for Michael Avon Oeming. I've always liked his art, but I haven't liked his writing in other books I've read that he wrote. But I'm loving this, and it feels like a set in medieval times with anthropomorphic animals, but they don't talk about as if they're animals at all. In fact, I think they might even use the word person or human or man. Um, but basically, this monk is a exorcist of sorts, and he goes around helping out people. And he gets a little monetary reward, which he brings back to the monastery, but they don't appreciate his work at the monastery. And it's visually inventive. It flows wonderfully. I'm calling this a cross between Mike Mignola and Usagi Yojimbo. Hellboy and Usagi Yojimbo, or BPRD and Usagi Yojimbo. Um, and it's really good. So it's definitely going on my pull list, and it's my number one comic. So thank you once again for sitting through the whole video. Um, I am sweating up a storm, but I'm enjoying this good beer, and hopefully I'll be back relatively soon. There's still some comics left over from the past 2 weeks, and then the comics from this Wednesday that I need to read. I got 8 comics this past Wednesday. So I will, and my family's going on a short vacation. So I hopefully will start catching up. I really like doing this every week, but sometimes life doesn't let me, or energy levels too. Okay, talk to y'all later.